I ended up with the opportunity to trade a watch and a car for this particular watch. Like, whoa, that's off the charts cool. It is the Grail watch that when I got, was like, yeah, this is just never leaving.
Drew is in town, so he popped by the office because he wanted to see a couple watches. Before we get to those, I want to talk about what is on your wrist, good sir. Before you start telling us, one thing I really respect about Drew, and I'm not just saying it's because he's sitting right next to me, I truly do love the guy. He just goes to show you that collecting modern and vintage is not mutually exclusive. What I tell everybody all the time, you can do both, and he truly does. He'll wear his AP Ceramic Perpetual 41, and then the next day wear a 6241 Paul Newman.
Oh.
So, kind sir, welcome to the office, and tell us about that, please.
Good to be here. This is effectively like whenever people ask what a Grail is, I think this is still kind of the ultimate, and it was my ultimate, largely coming from Paul Newman's involvement with cars and racing. And I mean, that was, I didn't have as long of a career as he did by any means, but I was way shorter. But
Did you race cars?
I did. I was in Grand Am. Yeah.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah, for like a minute, and then my body was like, no, you really shouldn't do that. Yeah, it is what it is. But I can still play with the stuff. So, I mean, yeah, cars were obviously like, I was into watches before cars, but I got into cars seriously before serious watches, if that makes sense.
Makes sense.
Even in the beginning, like Daytona was just kind of always it. And it wasn't because it was Rolex, it was because it was Daytona, which was a race. And I mean, the series I was in, that was 24 Hours of Daytona, one of the races in the series. I mean, it was one of those like, throughout the car stuff, Daytona's always kind of been there. So in general, that was always something I liked. But I ended up with the opportunity to trade a watch and a car for this particular watch, which was like flat out, I mean, white dial, 6241, unquestionably my favorite.
So you didn't just jump straight into a Paul Newman. You
know.
owned some other vintage watches before upgrading and working up to the Paul Newman. And it's interesting because I literally just sold a black dial version of this about a month ago, and Jordan had closed the deal, and it was the guy's first vintage watch.
Wow.
Oh, that's
damn.
Yeah. And not only that, super sweet guy, he gets the watch, and he's like, hey, I don't think this is working properly. It keeps getting stuck. And I'm like, hey, Jordan, ask him if he wound it.
Yeah, he's forgetting.
And he didn't realize it was even a manual watch, but he just loved the watch, and now he's like very into it. What did you start off with, and what did you work into? How'd you work up to this?
So I do remember this. So my first vintage watch was I don't remember what year, but a 70s red sub.
Okay.
Because that was kind of that was the other one, like, I just thought it was cool, the red text, It's always like the nerdy little detail where you're like, okay, well, there's some reason this is worth another X amount than a normal one, and that always appeals. And so I got that from, is it Watch You Want?
Yeah.
That was here, but for pre-Watchbox, pre-everything.
That was Watch You Want was a huge retailer.
That's right.
Down here, mostly modern stuff, and then they got bought out by Watchbox.
Yeah.
So if you go to their website now, just redirect right to Watchbox.
Which is funny. I didn't even know they still had the website, but I know the Watchbox guys and 1916 guys incredibly well, and it's just funny that my first vintage watch actually came from that, and Tim Massa worked there at that time, and I think I got it from Peter Bell, who still works for the company, which is just funny. But so it started with that, and that was like the watch that I was able to start putting a bunch of different straps on a NATO, different leather, everything, and that just starts your down the rabbit hole. After that, I wanted to go and find vintage anything in Germany or in Europe during a Europe trip, because I really do like having like a story association with something. Just having it is kind of one thing, but having like a cool story with it is kind of everything. And
it's like a memory.
And what's the memorable, you do a trip to Europe, and you're going to a bunch of different places, and for a watch guy, like, what's like the ultimate romantic thing, finding this cool vintage something in a store that you didn't know existed, kind of deal. And I was in Munich, and I was Googling all of vintage watch dealers, and meanwhile I didn't know I didn't know actually quite a bit of people, so I'm also kind of like hoping that these people are good as well. So that's a part of it. There's a place there called World of Time.
Yeah,
and I went there, and it was just one of those like instantly comfortable, like they knew their stuff. The
guy who owns that, Ralph Meertz, I believe is his name, and we've had some communication. I don't think we've ever done a deal together, but I've only heard good things. He's been in business for a very long time.
And he's a watchmaker himself. What I really wanted at that point was a patina, like a cool patina watch, but a really good one. And he had a 78 Sea Dweller, Great White and rail dial, untouched for the most part, actually, period, outside. Like no maintenance work, no anything. So the thing was like fattest lugs, all the sharpness, but dings, dents, everything. The guy that owned it apparently was a diver. the bezel had a ton of marks, but it had that like perfect ghosting kind of thing on it, like a dive watch that was used by a diver, Turkish diver, for apparently quite a few years. I just thought that was cool, and then the dial ended up being flawless. Like the guy took care of it in the sense of like made sure it was operating well, but didn't touch anything outside of that watch.
People forget that these Rolexes were utility, sports-made, purpose-driven watches. They were built to last. Like they weren't worth what they're worth now. They weren't sold as luxury watches. They were sold as tool watches. We bought original owner watches from the 50s, 60s that are still keeping good time, never been serviced. Original crystals, like held up well. Because people always ask me like, oh, if they see a little patina on the dial, is it going to get worse? I mean, well, if you don't mess with the integrity of the watch, no humidity gets in or something doesn't crack or whatever, they generally chip, as long as you keep the structural integrity of the watch in place.
And this has been done just like that. It was just one of those, like I saw it and I was like, this is right. It's been one of the watches that I've always enjoyed taking to friends of mine, because I'll say, check this out, and they'll almost all be like, oh shit, like, whoa, that's off the charts cool. Because and I like that. So I either love having a ton of patina, or I like having something like, if it's a modern watch, I'm definitely one of the people that gets super annoyed when I scratch something. It drives me to no end, and I can't get rid of that OCD thing. But vintage, I don't worry about it.
So the Newman, so you went through your phases of rut sub, sea dweller, etc. And I remember you told me that you had a similar to what I'm wearing right now. It's a regular silver dial 6263 that you traded up to get into this. So that was kind of the progression. You didn't jump right into Newman. You bought something a little bit less. It's like a starter vintage Daytona kind of thing.
Yeah, it was great. It was a black dial that was stupid perfect. Box papers, perfect watch. And it was actually from a retailer very close to where I live back in Philadelphia. Immediately there. Like, I used to go into the retailer as a kid.
Sold there.
Yeah. It was Bailey Bakes and Biddle. I mean, I still remember that. Yeah,
we get a lot of their watches.
Yeah, and it was just super funny, and I was like, oh, this is awesome, and I loved it, and that was an expensive watch even at that time, but it was before the 6239 Newman auction.
Okay.
So it was like a bunch of them took a nice, the Newman, right. his watch, but that popped up. The entire market, because people just started looking at him at that point. It's one of those, you scroll through Instagram, you scroll through pictures, and every single time one of those popped up, I was always like, oof, that's kind of it. Okay. Like that's like the one, kind of thing.
So before I ask you about the watch, you mentioned that you traded a watch and a car to get into this. What was the car?
The car was a 04 360 Modena stick.
Ferrari.
Yeah, which fits for Newman's thing, because he raced Ferrari as well, even though I'm a Porsche guy. But yeah, so it was that and the 6263, and that's the second time I've traded a car for a watch.
Wow. What was the first time?
First one was for the ceramic perpetual. That was a 993 C2S Aero kit car. Phenomenally great. I mean, amazing car. But long story short, I'm really happy with the deals.
Nice.
It did well.
Seems like you did okay. So when you were going to start looking at Paul Newman's, how did you land on a 6241 versus a regular 6239, which is the one Paul Newman wore?
Yep.
So for everybody, if they don't understand, this is a reference 6241 with the black Bakelite bezel. 6239 is the same exact watch but with a steel bezel.
At the end of the day, I wanted the extra little bit of visual width from the Bakelite bezel versus that steel one. Where now, I actually don't know if I care quite as much after having it, but I really wanted the first aesthetic of having the dark around the bezel. It didn't matter, Bakelite or any of even the newer ones. I wanted that with this particular watch, but with pump pushers. I love a pump pusher. I still love a 6263. It's still awesome, but I don't know. It's just something a little bit more romantic about the pump for me for that one.
I completely agree.
Yeah, it's a feel.
My favorite Paul Newman is a pump pusher 6262. I love the two color. Not that I don't love this dial as well, but I just love the white, black, without any red.
Yep. Yeah, no, I'm a fan of the red.
That's awesome. This watch is absolutely beautiful.
That's killer. Yeah, I put it's on a newer bracelet, so I can wear it and not have to worry about it quite as much. I have the rivet there, but everything else is full and proper. The dial's just killer.
Yeah.
And every time I look at it, I've had it for years now. I love it. It's one of the watches that, like, it is the Grail watch that when I got, I was like, yeah, this is just never leaving. Yeah. Like, there's nothing to replace it at all.
Yeah, it's hard to like move into something else from this. There are more expensive Paul Newmans that are rare and beautiful, etc. But this Perfect, and the condition's
Yeah.
perfect too.
Yeah, the condition was
Absolutely
killer.
great.
I also really wanted the red Daytona
Right.
on it. So like the newer, a 6263 Newman, which obviously is kind of a lot of people, that's kind of they're
Grail,
like the
yeah.
one that they really want. And almost every time I see them, I'm like, I love it. It's gorgeous. It's cool. But I do have a thing with I just love having the red Daytona there. And I'm not sure it matters as much for me with the one that you're wearing, those 6263s. I really like those. I mean, they can kind of do it with anything. But yeah, for the car guy, I'm like, I kind of have to have Daytona right there.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So tell us about, before we look at the
Yeah.
watches that I pulled out for you, tell us about this, not the watch, because this is actually my watch that you borrowed.
I
to wear
did.
the strap.
Thank you.
Tell us about this strap here. I know you've been working on this for a while, so
Yeah.
just give everybody a quick introduction to what it is.
So this is a collaboration that I have with Horace Watch Straps with Mark Margulies and Barbara over there, and they've been killer. But my little design brand is a little dinosaur. Its name is Derpy. Started on a really bad tattoo that I redrew for someone, and that's a whole other story.
Wait,
Yeah.
wait,
Yeah,
let's not brush over that.
Yeah.
Somebody asked you to draw a tattoo for them, and you just drew like a little derpy looking dinosaur.
So, long story to a medium is a friend of mine that worked at a bar in Philadelphia. In order for him to go out with a girl that he like fell asleep on twice, like when she drove into town, he was like, if you come and go out with me, I'll get your initials tattooed on my leg. So she ends up actually coming back, he gets her initials. They end up getting a bunch of mutual tattoos. I keep hearing about it. I'm like, oh, that's a really interesting story. Whatever. I don't meet her.
Are they still together?
No. I know, that's a whole other thing. 3 months after the whole thing, I meet her at a table at one of the other bars that I go to around there, and I come up and say hi, and I was like, I've heard all this story, like how, this is so cool, blah, 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 and I was like, you should have him get a tattoo that I draw, and immediately he's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I'm like, oh, okay, don't have to tell me, more than once. So
Right.
He was like, the only request that he had was that the drawing that he could attribute to a niece or nephew instead of just trying to draw something kind of okay. And I was like, well, I wouldn't be able to draw that anyway. So my drawing ability is maybe at a 10-year-old or 11-year-old. So I draw this little horrific looking, funny, good schnauzer sore looking dinosaur thing. Anyways, I give it to him, I sign it. I even asked him how much it was going to cost him, and he was like, he'll charge me shop minimum. I'm like, okay, here's the shop minimum, $60. I can't have you pay for this. I will literally wear that on my conscience for forever. And so I'm figuring he'll end up not doing it, and I'll just be like, all right, buy me a cool shot at your spot, because they have tons of insane whiskeys or whatever. And meanwhile, the next day, kind of forgot about it, and 5 o'clock rolls around, and I get a text, and it's a picture of his arm and that dinosaur schnauzer sort of thing with my signature underneath it. And I was like, oh my god.
Wow.
So
he's got a few tattoos, obviously.
he has quite a few tattoos.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's still there, if he covered it.
So you've since parlayed this into using this design to create fun little projects. I know you even got Audemars Piguet to use the design on the rotor of, what was it, a 15202?
It was a 15202. It was one of the last they delivered to a boutique before it was during they were delivering the 16202s, and ended up working that one of the last ones they were able to put this in. And the story's cool. The thing is awesome to me.
Right.
It's one of my favorite watches I have, mainly because of the story. I mean, I love the watch. They're gorgeous, but I look at that, and the dinosaur is a different dinosaur than the one that I redrew, but I look at that and I have to be happy.
Right.
Because it's such a funny, funky thing. Yeah, so in the watch world and the luxury world in general, I do think that people take things incredibly seriously, and they'll buy something, and then it's kind of the next, and they don't take a minute and enjoy the fact that they're able to do this. And I mean, even just in collecting in general, I watch people get addicted to buying stuff, and I'm like, hold up, enjoy what you have. Take a moment to laugh at it. If you're doing this, life is good. It's really, really, really good.
For sure.
With the Audemars, every time I see that, it's kind of one of those, it's that vibe, and I just like this mix of embracing the silly and then serious at the same time. I think that's super cool.
So speaking of which, what is the process like for getting AP to agree to customize part of your watch? Was it a difficult process? Is it a long process? How does it work?
It's a longer process, but really at the end of the day, it was my SA at Audemars in New York, Kevin.
SA meaning sales associate.
Sales associate, yeah, who's been beyond phenomenal. He's followed my car stuff, and I drew this dinosaur in my Singer. That was kind of part of it. So I'm telling him this entire story and then showing the pictures of me scribbling in my Singer before it's done.
Cash drop Singer. Continue.
Yeah, it is what it is.
That's a good way to put it. Is what it is.
Yeah. And I'm telling you about the story, and I was like, I know you guys can do custom rotors, and I know you can do it on a perpetual or a jumbo. I think that's it. And I was like, it kind of be fun to do this if we could. So he was like, yeah, we can, but need to figure out the allocation, what it's going to go in. And I was like, well, I think this silly dinosaur would be kind of cool in a jumbo, because the jumbo is the classic gents watch, very proper, very that kind of thing. And so he was like, yeah, okay, let me go check it out. So it takes him a little bit to see even like feasibility, because there's a lot of really sharp lines in it, and whatever they do by hand.
Sure.
So he goes and he says, you know what? It looks like they may be able to do it. And it was like, okay, great. He's like, next step is trying to get an allocation. And this is now like 2019, 2020. Things are heating pretty well, with them. So it was one of those like, listen, it's going to take me a little bit, but let's see what we can do kind of deal. And when he's said it, he's always meant it. So like, I wait about a year and change. They discontinue the 15202 in that time, and I was like, oh well, I guess it won't be going on that one. I knew, whatever they were going to replace it with the 16202, it would still be fine. It would still be a thing. But to me, having that on the classic movement, or like the movement for the last of that gen, I actually thought was pretty cool. That's kind of a part of it, even though it's a total pain in the ass to wind and do anything with it. Yeah. I mean, without a doubt.
The usability of the 15202.
It's
mixed reviews.
Yeah, no, and I that's one of the watches I keep on a winder, because I just don't want to deal with it. But all that aside, about a year and something later, he calls. He's like, get your credit card out right now. I'm like, done. Whatever it is, like, let's do it. He's like, I got it for you. And this is post the discontinuation of the 16202. So I'm thinking this is awesome. And then we started the design process, and like, when you don't really think about everything that's on a rotor until you have control over quite a bit that's on a rotor,
right?
And then like what they have to do, and then like design that they have to keep within so it actually spins and winds a watch, et cetera, et cetera. So it takes like about 6 months to do that back and forth email. Yeah, I mean, I would say overall, yeah, probably maybe 4.
Okay.
Maybe 4 months, realistically 3-4 months to do that.
And then from approval until delivery.
That was another few months. I got the watch mid 2022.
Okay.
Like March, April 2022. It took a bit of time. I have to go back and look at the time frame, but yeah, it takes them a minimum of 9 months.
Was there an additional cost associated with
Yeah, there was an additional cost, but it wasn't bad to me. I didn't think at all. It was like $4,000 extra.
Okay.
To do a custom gold rotor, whatever. Anyway, so design the rotor. I actually put my Singer commission, the sine qua non, on the like top part of the rotor, because I also felt like I'm like that without, like without the rotor, it's not an automatic watch. I mean, whatever. I'm nerdy with that, and I thought it matched, and I can't help it. No one can help me. So anyways, do this. I get a picture of my rotor being made in Switzerland by the guy that's doing it. I'm like, A, this is the coolest thing in the world. B, I probably shouldn't have this picture. And then, the watch comes, and I'm like, all right, this is just the coolest thing on the planet. Nice. So I post a picture of that. Ton of people responded to it, were asking questions about Audemars being able to do like custom, blah, blah, blah. Boutiques got tons of inquiries to do anything at that point. And meanwhile, like, Eric Koo has had his rotor for a while, so people knew it existed.
Right.
But for some reason, like, not like this. Like, it was just not.
I don't know what Koo's design is, but I can't.
I think it's his initials.
I can't imagine it's like a drawing design.
You know
what I'm saying. So
yeah, and a silly one at that.
I think people didn't realize the extent to which they would go to make something for their clients, which is nice, because you hear a lot of horror stories about AP and their customer care. Obviously, did very right by you.
Yeah.
And I think that's very cool. You made it uniquely your own. One of the most viral clips that we've had now on our Instagram Reels was Matt Farrow talking about his customized Rolex Explorer 2, where he had Bora Bora painted on the dial to commemorate a trip that he got to spend with, I think it was his brother-in-law before he passed away, to remind himself of that trip with mostly glowing opinions. Like, that's great, you made the watch your own, and it becomes personal to
Absolutely.
you and sentimental to you. So that's awesome. So to circle back, shameless plug.
Yes.
Did a collaboration with Horace for your Derby Dinosaur.
I did.
You guys are making a factory run of these straps.
Yeah, we're making that now. and they'll be available for 90s 2000 2000s GMTs, as long as it's 40 millimeter. Daytonas up to 2023, and we have ones that fit the end link at the case like perfectly. And then we also have straight lugs for a 20, 22, and 24. So you'll be able to derpy up any of your watches that fit within that realm, which is quite a few, I imagine.
All right, well, before we let you go, the purpose of you actually coming to this office was to look at some watches.
Yeah, right.
Every time you're here, we end up spending hours just hanging out. So I already think I know which watch you're going for because we've talked about it a bunch. Drew asked me, he was like, listen, I have like all these crazy watches. I don't have like a standard 36 millimeter, more dressy, nighttime kind of watch where you don't really want to wear the sporty Paul Newman. You don't want to wear a huge Royal Oak 40 millimeter or a 40 millimeter Sea Dweller. I wanted something like 36, a little bit more casual. I picked out 3 watches for him. I think I know which one he's going to go for, or that he's leaning towards, but I picked out a couple dates that I thought were kind of Drew. And then we picked out an Explorer 1 1016, which is sporty, obviously, because it's an Explorer, but I think it's the most toned down sports watch. And I've talked on this channel a lot about how much I love this reference because while it is a sports watch, it's similar to the style and tenor of like a Datejust, where it's 36 millimeter, time only, this without the date, like a Datejust would have. And you can wear it, it's thin, it works literally in every occasion. Before we get to this watch, we have 2 day dates here. I pulled out an 18038 and an 18238, so single versus double quick, which is just calendar functions. Essentially the same watch, just different upgraded movement. The 18038 I thought was good for you because it's not an ordinary 18038. It is a Tiffany & Co., so retailed by the retailer Tiffany & Co., which you know very well. And also the cool thing about this watch is that it's a quote-unquote lemon dial. So if you look at the difference between the 2 watches, this one being an 18238, the champagne diamond dial, and just absolutely insane condition. The champagne dials are like a sunburst finish. The lemon dial is a more matte, and it's a much brighter color.
I love that.
It really like jumps out.
It's really unique.
Because when you're looking at these day dates and these watches, especially like Datejust as well, 99% of them are sunburst finished. You don't see a lot of a different finish on the dial besides sunburst. That added together with Tiffany Co., because I know you like to do things that are a little more special, I thought were really good options for you. Sadly, I don't think he's going to go for either day.
Although I'll tell you, this is just really cool. Without a doubt, if they did these in white gold with the Tiffany like that, and it wasn't like a whole holy mother thing, that would be
that's
directly up my.
It's funny you point that out because I hadn't really thought of it. I've had plenty of like steel, Datejust, Tiffany Co.'s date models. Even there's Oyster Perpetuals that Bunny Mellon had in her auction and with Sotheby's, years and years and years ago. I don't think I've ever seen a white gold Tiffany. I don't think they made it. I don't think they made it. If anybody has ever seen one, drop us a message, talk in the comments below, point us in the right direction. That'd be interesting. Maybe I'll see something that I personally haven't even seen. But anyways, getting back to the watches at hand. I know you've seen this watch before.
I have.
I think you love it. And so we are looking at a 1016 Explorer, but it's not just any 1016. This is an early, circa 1962-63 chapter ring Explorer with an exclamation dial. Exclamation meaning the little lume dot below the 6, which signifies a lower level of radiation in the watch. And the cool thing about this one, though, is just the way it uniquely aged.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about the love for patina, what drew you to that Sea Dweller. It's the same thing with this. It just has the aesthetic.
Which I haven't had a tropical dial watch.
Right. Yeah, and this isn't like full brown. Some people only buy tropical dials if it's like full caramel, even across the dial. This one has just a unique pattern to it that really has... There's no other
just cool.
adjective to use besides unique. It's just cool.
Yeah,
it's really
just
what
cool.
it is. Stretch rotted bracelet. I think it's a perfect watch that you could just throw on and not really have to worry about, think about. And it works with everything.
Yeah, just it's slightly unique. The coloring, gilt. Colors are just killer.
Yeah, I really love the history of the Explorer. Yeah. I love what it stands for. I love what it was built for. Mm-hmm. It's a classic Rolex watch. And I'm going to say something maybe some people watching won't love, but there's a lot of newer like Rolex models that, have been introduced in the past, let's say 2-3 decades that are like their new tool watches that I just don't get. They never sat with me. And so I'm talking about the Yachtmaster, the Sky Dweller, these kind of watches where it's like, why? What purpose do they serve? The Explorer, the GMT, the Sub, the Sea Dweller, the Daytona. they were built during an era where they were actually used as tool watches, and they were made for a reason. People use them for those reasons. I don't think anybody's really using a Yachtmaster or a Sky Dweller or whatever.
No one's dwelling in the sky with their Sky Dweller. I mean, I guess a lot of some private jet dwelling.
Right, exactly. So I love the Explorer. I think you're making the right decision going for that one. I think it's awesome.
It's just cool. I love it.
All right. Well, dude, thank you so much for sitting down with us. I know you're out of town in a couple days.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll see you the next few months.
Oh,
So
I know.
always in Miami.
I have to come here every time. I have to bother. I have to bother you. If I don't, I feel like it's a wasted trip.
If not, I'm sure I'll see you in Los Angeles in the summertime.
Absolutely.
Dude, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right. Guys, thank you so much for watching that video, and thanks again to our very dear friend, Mr. Drew Coblitz. We love sitting down with him. If you like this content, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and take a look on the screen for other videos like this where we sit down with other amazing collectors. See you on the next one. Bye.